My name is Fran Sincata, and I have the pleasure of interviewing my parents, Don and Lola Adams, who are both from West Virginia. Don is from Sophia, West Virginia, near Beckley, and Lola is from Clay. And today we're going to be talking about their time serving in World War II. So, Dad, you were in the Navy.
Right.
Can you tell us anything about when you joined?
Well, they asked for
Volunteers?
volunteers, right? And the first thing that then they sent me to Clare School at that time to learn the facts about ships and how to control the ship and
Okay. So, as I understand it, you had just turned 18,
right.
and did you select the Navy?
Oh, well,
Yes.
I had to select one of the
One of the services?
yes, one of the services. So I selected the Navy, and then they sent me to training school to learn the uses of the
Okay. And once you went through that part of the training school, do you recall what happened next? How they decided what you were going to do on the ship?
I was sent to training school.
Right.
Right.
He went to court school in Connecticut
Okay.
before they sent him on ship.
Because in the Navy, you were a corpsman.
Right.
So what is a corpsman?
Well, a corpsman is
What kind of duties did you have?
well,
He was a medic.
yeah, they took me with some other core school, and I was selected to as a core school with in medicine.
Right. In medicine. Okay. Do you remember the name of the ship you were on?
The USS Bogue.
Right. The USS Bogue, which we see from your hat is a CVE 9 classification, right?
Right.
Can you tell us anything about that type of ship?
Well, it's see,
That's okay. So it was an escort aircraft carrier,
right.
right? And you were in the Atlantic?
We at first was in the Atlantic Ocean, and we scored all over practically this. the Washington area, and after that we converted over to the then through the
When the war ended in Europe, then his ship was sent to the Pacific.
Right, and
They
how,
went through the Panama Canal
the
to get over
Panama
there.
Canal, okay.
Right,
And then you're in the Pacific.
right, all over the world.
When they stopped at all these ports, they had to have shots.
Because any place we landed to, we were likely to get some sort of terror.
How did you give them the shots?
Well, just like any other shot with a needle
And where did you put that needle?
in their rear end. We lined them up in a line, and I had a needle for each one, and they'd come up and turn it around, and bam, and that was it.
You'd smack them first.
At first, I'd smack them on the rear so it wouldn't hurt, and then the needle jerked it out, and another next kid come up and just bam. For every man on the ship at the time.
So anytime they needed a shot, they wanted Don to give it to them because he was the only one that would smack them. And it didn't hurt as bad when he did that.
Right.
So as I recall that you have a story about the very first weekend you were on the USS Bogue and an adventure that you had with the captain. Can you tell us that story?
Yes. That was the first day, the first days that I came up, got on the ship, and all men were on sick leave, and they got to go off, and well, most of the time they had fun, you know what I mean. And then they come on ship, and they weren't too safe, in walking and so forth. So
He forgot the duck to go down in the hatch.
So the
Yeah.
the captain came on shore after having some
Right.
drinks, right?
well, the captain came on the ship, and he had some, and four other captains were having fun ashore, and they came in and they kind of watered around, and the captain of our ship kind of didn't get on, it wasn't very steady, and he went and hit the bark, and he wasn't too steady, and he landed, and his head hit
The bulkhead.
the bulkhead, and he cut his head, and I had kind of sew him up this way and that way, and
And was that the first time you'd ever sewed anybody up?
well, not that kind of sewing up. So,
He said the scalp was really tough, and he broke sutures.
right. You'd think the scalp was tender, but it isn't. You have to pound it in and punch.
A lot of force. You had to use a lot of force.
A lot of force.
So he tore his scalp, and you put stitches in, right?
Right.
He thought he was going to be court-martialed, but the next day the captain came and told him, "Adams, you did a good job."
Well, anyway, he and I got to be good friends, and I got some favors that some of the other seamen didn't, because I knew some things about the captain and they didn't. And it was, well, of course, a friendship it probably wouldn't have had if this fun they had come back from going ashore and drinking some drinks. Weren't very friendly. I mean, not steady.
So you were a medic on the ship, and you took care of the sick guys, and you gave them shots, and unfortunately you sutured up the captain's head. As I understand it, you had another job at some point. You became the X-ray technician, is that right?
Right.
And how did that happen?
The original X-ray technician was transferred to another ship,
Yeah,
and so he was the next man on the totem pole.
I had to X-ray all the sickness and
He had another job too. He also helped get him ready for burial.
yeah.
Any fatalities?
And whenever other ships would be bombed or sinking, they'd bring the survivors onto their ship and they helped them. And even if it was the enemy, they still wouldn't let them drown if they could bring them ashore.
Right. So one day they said, Adams, you're the X-ray tech, right? And what did they ask you to do? Mom might need to help you with this one.
I don't remember it, I don't think.
They gave you a book.
Well, they gave me a book to give them shots and
Right, but as I recall the story, which Mom might remember when I start, they gave you a book to know how to run the machine, and they said, tomorrow you're the X-ray tech.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what they did.
And that was your training. Here's the book.
That's right. So it was just grab a needle and jerk the guy, and he had already taken his clothes off, and I went bam and out, and that was next man.
And that was that.
That was it. Every man on the ship in a new area of the world. So,
Okay.
A few years ago, we were in a store, and someone came up, and Don was wearing his hat, and somebody came up and was talking to him about it, and so he said it was like a tour ship. The war was, and so I looked at the guy and I said, well, it was a tour ship. He thought because he had ice cream and wasn't shooting anybody like this. I said, well, ask him how come if it was a tour ship that he had nightmares for years afterwards.
Not a tour I would want to be on. So you were on the USS Bogue, which was an escort carrier ship, but did you also sink submarines?
yes, occurrences. The Bug had
His ship sank the only Japanese sub in the Atlantic, not Pacific, in the Atlantic, the only one. And what happened when they, tell them what happened when that sub was sunk.
I think there was cargo on it, right?
oh yeah. There was
Rubber.
yeah. That sea was carrying natural rubber, and it floated. So they put it on because of rubber, of course, at that time, and it was very important because they made lots of material out of natural rubber. So, and they put it in a hole, and it stunk like heaven. No, not heaven. Not heaven. And but you couldn't get from one place on the ship. You go through where that stuff was where it was in a hole, and but it was a very precious making gun parts and so forth.
Right. Okay. So, Mom, Dad shared some things about his time in the war. What can you tell us about your time?
Well, I was the secretary of the Signal Corps in Arlington, Virginia. But when I left there, I was told, and I had to sign a paper to that effect, that I would not talk about what I had seen or anything I'd done there. But I was 17 at the time, so I probably can't remember it anyway, I think.
So tell us what the Signal Corps was.
It was Army. And I was secretary for about 24, 25 officers. And they did experiments, and then they would write up the results in longhand. Now, this was before computers, and I had to transcribe it and type their reports. And they sometimes used words longer than I was, and I kept a dictionary by my elbow so that I would not misspell what they were saying. But oftentimes it's hard to transcribe somebody's longhand. They didn't print, they wrote.
And what kinds of experiments were they doing?
Well, I really don't know. I really don't remember. And I was just a country bumpkin. And it was all new and strange to me anyway. But here's one thing that I do recall. that our offices was in the basement. And you couldn't go from one room to another unless your badge matched. So we were in this basement, and they used these plyboards, do sheetrock things to square off and make rooms. And sometimes I had to go deliver messages to these guys when they were at the other end of the basement. And I remember that they had big, looked like television screens. What I remember that is now, because then I didn't know anything about television, because this was in 1944. And whenever the Apollo, whatever, was shot up in the air, and they'd talk back to the main base, they'd always show what they were receiving. And to me, it looked like the same thing that I saw when I would go deliver these messages. So I really don't know what they were doing.
And how did you end up getting your job?
Well, my sister worked there, and she had taken my high school picture to show her friends. And her captain asked her if I could do the same stuff that she did. She was a electrical technician. And she told him no, that I did shorthand typing, and I wanted to be a secretary. So he says, well, we'll just take her. So he sent me papers to come to work for them. I didn't have a test or anything. But I did have to be, I can't think of the word, but the FBI had to.
You had to have clearance?
Yeah, I had to have clearance before I could go to any of those rooms. I couldn't even go where my sister worked. And there were a whole lot of us, and we were in one big room, and they had us doing busy work. Like we were pretending we were decoding things.
And where did you live when you were there?
I lived at a place they called 48 Acres of Women. There were 10 dormitories, and each one of them held about 500 women. And each one of them was named for a state, and the building that my sister and I lived in was called Idaho. And it's been so long ago, it's hard for me to remember. But we were right next door to the Arlington National Cemetery, where it is now.
So what was your room like in the dorm?
Well, it was a great big room. We had cots, army cots, to sleep on. And if you put the cot across the room, we went from wall to wall. And you put it the other way, you had enough room to open a door. And we had a little tiny desk. And the space where you opened the door, they had a little place where you could hang your clothes. And that was about it.
So during this wartime, how did you all communicate with your families?
Well, I wrote letters. I don't know how he communicated. So I guess he did once in a while. They must have heard from him.
Did you write letters home, Dad?
Oh, yes.
And who did you write to, do you know?
Mostly my family and girlfriends.
Oh, girlfriends, huh?
Yeah, well.
Well, I didn't have a boyfriend. I didn't date because I wouldn't have a man on a Christmas tree.
Okay.
Well,
Because you didn't know each other then.
No, we met at the university in my junior year.
So, after the war, what did you do, Dad?
I, well, become a teacher.
And where did you go to school for that?
At
West Virginia University.
oh yeah.
I should explain that Don has some dementia because he's had a couple of strokes. And that's why I trying to help him remember.
And so what did you both do when you graduated from West Virginia University?
Well, I started university one semester before he did, because he didn't get out until in November of that year. And because he was military, they gave them tests, and any test that they passed, they got college credit for it. So he had a whole year college credit. So he went to school. I went one semester before he did. And he graduated one semester before I did. And so we had met in my junior year. And he had a hard time getting me to do much cooperation because I was standoffish. But we'd finally decided to get married in June after graduation. But then in December, he commented that if we could find an apartment, we'd get married then. But at university, apartments were as scarce as hen's teeth. There's no way you could get an apartment. So, but when I went to class that day, I was talking to my girlfriend that I'd known since infancy, and there were other people at the table. And one girl said, well, there's an empty one where I live. So we went to investigate it, and we saw it right away why it was unoccupied. It was a basement apartment. It had a gas furnace in it that took up almost the entire room, and it had been converted to gas. And you had to walk around it to reach everything. And but we wanted to get married, so we took it. And it cost us $35 a month.
So
So
what
we
year?
were married in January in
Of what year?
1949. So we're the 49ers.
Okay. So is there anything else you'd like to add about your time at that time during the war? Anything that you remember that you want to throw
Well,
in?
I know that I kind of grew up. I was 17 at the time. But my brother and my sister wanted me to go to college when I got out of high school, but I didn't want to. I've been in school all my life, I felt, and I didn't want to. But after I was there at the Signal Corps working, I realized how dumb I was and that I wanted to go to school and learn something. And even though I didn't have any money, I was dumb enough to go and think that I could. And at that time, you could just go into the school like you do in high school or elementary school now. And so the first semester I stayed with my girlfriend who stayed with her aunt, and she allowed me to stay there and pay her what her niece was paid, which wasn't very much. But then there was a advertisement in the paper that a professor needed someone to watch over his 3-year-old because he and his wife both worked. And he was in preschool But his bus left after they were at work and got home before they got home. So he needed somebody there. And so I was interviewed and he accepted me. And so that's how I went to school. I wasn't paid any money, but I did have room and board.
I'm remembering something you talked about when you were still working for the Signal Corps, that you saw films of the liberation of
Yes.
prisoner camps.
I don't know whether it was once a week or whether it was once a month or twice a month, but it was often that they took all of us down to a room like an auditorium, and it was like seeing a newsreel. And they would show us things that were happening because they wanted us to remember that even though there wasn't any actual battles in the U.S. soil, we still were at war. And one that I remember vividly was one that they showed the concentration camps over in Germany. And it was one that had all these people were dead, and they just dumped them in a big hole. And it was just men and women and children, and they were so starved that all their joints were just big knots. You could just see the bones. And I can still see that picture. It made such an impression that I never forgot it.
All right, well, thank you both very much for sharing your stories and your time and your service.